So an anthropologist walks up to this old Indian. He says, before white people came, what did you call America? He says, ours. Have any of you seen this symbol before? If you haven't, it's called Kokopelli, and it's emblazoned on a lot of products. Anything you can think of that can be sold, it's printed on there. And it's sold as a Native American symbol. It's not. It's billed as a Hopi Native American symbol. As a Hopi Indian myself, and through a lot of research, I can tell you, again, it isn't. This symbol, Kokopelli, has nothing to do with Native American culture. It has no historic relevance or ethnographical relevance. So you might ask, where did it come from? It comes from two Native American sources, that's true. One is Pueblo Indian rock art, the other is Hopi Indian kachinas. And it's fashioned with sort of dominant culture, white stereotypes. I'm going to discuss all three of those things today. So let's start with the Pueblo Indian rock art. Here are some examples of what's called the flute player motif. Okay? The flute player, as Dr. Eckhart Malaki says in his book, Kokopelli, The Making of an Icon, is the most common of all images in Native American rock art. It occurs over 10,000 times across hundreds of sites in the Four Corners areas of America, which is Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona. Okay, and I don't know if you can see, but there's a couple other things besides the flute that you can notice about a lot of these images. This humpback, his phallus, that thing between his legs, and this feather thing on his head. But not all of them have this. So this image is not uniform. Okay, it has a lot of variety. So what does this say about Pueblo Indians? It just means probably that they had a lot of, the flute was very significant. It does not necessarily mean that this has anything to do with the Hopi Indians, because those are two different tribes which existed hundreds of years apart. Okay, so this is the template where we get Kokopelli, this flute player image. All right, so let's talk about where we get the name Kokopelli and the mythology behind it. Okay, the Kokopelli is built as this womanizer, this Don Juan of the desert. This, and you can see kind of this Kenny G looking look he has. Where do we get that? This is from the Hopi Indian fertility kachina. A kachina, by the way, is just think of it as a god. Kachina called Kukupalau. He's a fertility kachina. This is his associate Kukupaman, the female aspect and the male aspect. If you can notice about Kukupalau also, the humpback and his erect phallus and those things on his head, the feathers. But you notice this proboscis, which is basically, and also by the way, Kukupalau, according to Daniel Barber and Kachinas in Wood, is basically an anthropomorphic robber fly, which is just a bug. Here's a picture right here. See his hump, his large eyes, his proboscis, and it kind of looks like he's holding it, like a flute. So, how do we get this to this? The Hopi Indians are in an area where the Pueblo Indians historically lived. And they have this, a few superficial similarities, the humpback, proboscis, and the phallus. So anthropologists come in, they connect the two, they say they must be the same. But kachinas are never represented in cave art. Hopi Indians don't paint on cave walls, they don't carve on cave walls. They only represent their kachinas, their gods, in two ways, with little dolls called kachina dolls. They're carved in wood, or through costume when they dance. They don't paint them. Okay, this is an artist recreation, 1850s artist recreation of what he saw at the dances. So, let's recap real quick. Pueblo Indian rock art, the flute player. This persona of a Kukupalau, Hopi fertility kachina. So how do we tie those together and how do we get Kokopelli? Next, turn this around real quick. So, Kokopelli, the image of Kokopelli, this will stay up for a minute, has encoded stereotypes as, excuse me, Alastair Bonet says in his article in 2006, pale face, white mask. It has encoded stereotypes about Native Americans. And a few of those have to do with Indians being peaceful, primitive, carefree before the arrival of whites, which is not true. As simple people, playful, just they're out playing their flutes and dancing before we came, basically. As these original ecologists, as noble savages. It ties into these myths of Pocahontas, of Thanksgiving, of these obsession with dream catchers. These are all myths, and they're racist. But, and then what's the purpose? It's a continuation of stereotypes that result in cultural genocide, really. And you can see the success of this campaign from the Kachina art of modern day. Before 1960, according to, excuse me, Laurel Davis Delano in his article, Eliminating Native American Mascots, you never see a Kukupalau Kachina with a flute. Now you do, in order to satisfy that consumer demand to see him that way, which you should not. This is a picture of the Kachina doll, by the way, with the flute, which you should not have. But you have this Kokopelli image in all these little funny cartoons, these characters. He's playing golf, he's playing soccer, he's windsurfing. I can show you others where he's doing all kinds of drugs. What does that really mean? And how is this racist? Well, if you look at just the image of Kokopelli by himself, you wouldn't be able to tell what race it is unless you know a little something about the image behind it, how it's being sold. Excuse me. Excuse me. But if you know a little something about it, and you know what it's saying, you get the racism behind it. So, one second here. Everything against me. Well, you've seen it. That's Kokopelli. Well, we don't need that anymore. But, okay. But it's really, it's an example of taking a symbol that has religious significance. Both of these, both the flute player images and the Kachina, they have religious significance to ancient Indians. When you take them and you make them into a cartoon, kind of lighthearted and carefree, it's a way of appearing to assimilate them, but really destroying it. And again, it's cultural genocide in a very happy kind of way, until Kokopelli becomes sort of the Mickey Mouse of Native Americans. So what have we talked about today? Kokopelli. Kokopelli comes from two Native American sources, Pueblo Indian rock art for his image, Hopi Kachinas for his mythology and his name, and it has engraved dominant culture stereotypes. But it is not a Native American symbol. Nothing to do with real Native American ethnography. But whatever Kokopelli may be, he's just a symbol. Like all symbols, whether it be a cross or a pentacle or a peace sign. The only meaning behind the symbol is what you put behind it. But I think if you were to ask that old Indian what he would call Kokopelli, he would not call it our symbol, but their symbol.